Hello, and welcome to the Under Budget Outdoors podcast, a podcast for new, intermediate, and seasoned hunters across the world. A podcast about experience, gear, knowledge, and more. Whether you hunt with a bow, crossbow, rifle, or shotgun, you can hunt properly and efficiently while being under budget. Just remember, it doesn't take big bucks to kill big bucks. Let's get right into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Under Budget podcast. Today we're on episode 7. We're going into our mistakes that we've made, things that we've learned from, experiences, and stuff like that. Nate and Brock are here, and we're going to jump right into episode 7 here. So make sure you guys hit the like, subscribe button, follow on all of our socials there. Everything's linked down below. You want me to start with my little story there, since we've kind of hit on it a few times?
Yeah, let's just roll right in.
So, like Brock and I have talked about a few times, we went down to Georgia in September of 23. And what's that?
Shout out.
Yeah, to Oconee River Lodge. Still can't wait to go, and we're 17 months away. But
and we have more knowledge this time going down.
Yeah. So the first night we were there, we met the whole crew, and one of the guides, Clint, was kind of giving us a little bit of instruction on hog hunting. Now, I've never seen a wild hog before. I've seen pigs, but I don't know. So one of the rules that he told us was, if you see a sow, which is a female pig with babies, don't shoot it.
Or if she's visibly pregnant.
Correct. Or if she's visibly pregnant, which he pretty much said, like, her belly would be almost dragging on the ground. Don't shoot them. Understandable, right? So the first morning we were out there, I didn't see anything. Later that evening we went back out, and I actually moved tree stands. And I don't know, I think we were out there maybe two hours about, and I hear some rustling coming from behind the feeder. Feeder was directly out in front of me, about 40 yards. Couldn't really see anything.
With bows, right?
Yeah, we only went with bows.
Yeah, we went down for opening weekend of archery, so it was bow only at that point.
So I heard some rustling, and I'm like, all right, there's probably a pig back there or something. So I just waited, and I see this decent sized pig come out. Again, I don't know what their sizes are. I'm not 100% sure. I should have done some research, but
and there again, they were 40, 45 yards away.
Right.
So
yeah, at that point, they were probably 45, 50 away. So I wasn't 100% sure. So my first mistake was I didn't do any research. And there's a hint for everybody. If you're going for something, do your research. Learn what you're going for. Because Mr. Hotshot PJ here thought he knew everything. So I see this pig come out, full black. I couldn't even give you an estimate at the time of what I thought how big it was, but I was like, all right, it's decent. And she steps out of the heavy cover, and she was only, I don't know, maybe 3 foot out of the cover, and then I see 2 little piglets come behind it. I'm not going to shoot anything that I was told not to. I'm not breaking any rules, especially on day one. Like, we're not doing that, right? So they came out, they went directly under the feeder. I ranged them. They were at, I believe it was 41 yards when I first ranged them. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, my gut is telling me, like, I should really check in with the owner and see if this is okay. Again, I don't know what sizes they're supposed to be. But in the back of my head is, like Clint said, don't shoot a mom with babies. I will put a picture up at some point here, you guys can see what I was looking at, but
Hogzilla, probably.
So I ended up taking a picture and I sent it to Kevin, the owner, and I was like, hey, like, is this shootable? Now, I didn't know, but at the time, him and Clint were watching the game camera saying, why the hell is this guy not shooting at these hogs? And here I'm sitting in my tree stand, like, waiting for a response, and I'm not going to blame it on him at all. But I'm sitting there waiting, and it was like 10 minutes, and now these hogs are behind the feeder. So now I don't have a clean shot. I don't have an ethical shot. My grouping at 45 yards, I don't even know what it would be because I never shot more than 40 yards. At 40, at the time, I want to say probably a 5 to 6 inch grouping. So I wasn't confident in taking that shot. But he texted me back. He was like, "You can shoot all 3." I'm like, "Damn." You know, that sucks. So I'm sitting there, and then I was so focused on them that I still to this day don't know what was off just to my right side. But all the hogs picked their heads up and were looking right to my right side. I looked over, I didn't see anything, and then I heard kicking from my right side, so I'm assuming it was a deer. And that, whatever animal that was, that took off farther to my right, which I believe was northbound at that point. And then the hogs, they all darted away from me, away from the feeder, further out. So then now I'm like, great, like, okay, hopefully this thing comes back. Like they said that the hogs will scare the deer away. Now I'm wondering why the hogs got scared and left. They definitely didn't know I was there. They ended up coming back, but they stayed behind the feeder, and I was ranging them at like 50-51 at that point. Long story short, I didn't end up getting a shot. I was pretty pissed off at myself. Had I known, I would have at least taken a shot at the mom, the bigger one. But moving on, it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Kevin came and picked me up and was like, "What happened? Like, what went wrong?" And I was like, "I didn't know. I didn't know what size was a shooter. I didn't know that I could have shot both of what I thought were babies." He was like, "Yeah, no, like you could have dropped all of them." And now I was really kind of pissed at myself, but you know, I just kind of made the best of it. Like we went back to the lodge, and I was showing him pictures and showing Clint pictures, and we kind of just made a joke about it. I mean, they had already told some of the other guys, like, yeah, like this guy had an opportunity. He didn't know, so he didn't take the shot. And all these other guys, unfortunately, didn't see a single thing. And here I'm like, yeah, I had 3 hogs, but, you know, didn't take the shot, you know.
I'm too good to take a shot on that. So
I wasn't thinking that way. I was more nervous that I didn't want to get in trouble for shooting something that I was told not to shoot. You know, had I done some research, I probably would have made the attempt. But again, I was just so worried that, like, okay, now these little ones are with it. Like, I don't want to take that.
Well, and like in my opinion, I mean, like you said, like we all joked about it. We still joke about it to this day and everything. But at the same time, it's also respectable because you wanted to be ethical, you wanted to be right in what you were doing.
Exactly.
You weren't comfortable taking the shot. You didn't know. You chose not to take that shot.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that would have just said, "Screw it, I'm going to take the shot and I'll deal with the consequences." And you chose
right. And I wasn't going to do that. You know, like.
Right.
Another thought in my head was like, okay, what if there's a big buck in the area and I shoot a hog and it squeals and scares off the buck? Now I just lost my opportunity at a buck. it was like, all right, it's day one. I don't want to screw up an opportunity, which at that point was my last opportunity to shoot anything on that trip. So, the following day, a couple of the guys at the lodge were like, oh, let me see the pictures. Like, I want to see what you were looking at. A couple of guys agreed with me, like, yeah, had I not done any research, I would have taken that shot, or I wouldn't have taken that shot. So then the following night, one of the other guys that was actually from Pennsylvania, he saw all three of them. They all came out, and he took the shot on the mom, and he ended up actually just getting a heart shot on it. Just barely got a heart shot on it. So Kevin came and he picked me up and asked if I wanted to help try to locate it, and of course I was like, yeah, absolutely. So pitch black, thick ass cover. I mean, there was tunnels essentially through the vines and the overgrowth and everything. So we had to go through certain areas, and we were following pig paths. And Kevin's son actually was the one that found it. And she ended up, I forget what they said. She was over 200 pounds.
I think he said he estimated it around like 225 to 235, somewhere in that area.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was a big pig.
It was a good sized pig. I think, Nate, I sent you the picture of it that night, because that was the same night that the only buck that was taken that weekend.
Oh, yes. I didn't know.
Yeah, that the buck was taken the first night.
Was it the first night, or did they both come back the same night?
No, it was the first night.
That's right. Yes, it was.
But yeah, so then, what was his name? Terry, I think his name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry ended up getting that big hog. So I mean, it was cool to see. They got a bunch of pictures with it. I took a couple pictures of it as well. But it was a big learning experience. I mean, I don't necessarily want to consider that a mistake. The only mistake that I made was not doing enough research and just thinking like, all right, I've seen all these pictures that they've been posting of 20, 30 hogs around the stand. Like, I'm going to pick the biggest one and drop it. And that's what was in my mind. Like, that's what was going to happen.
Well, and also at the same time, like, you think about it. So obviously up here, we deal with colder climates a lot more than they do in Georgia or anywhere down south. So when we're out deer hunting and we shoot a deer that's 180, 200 pounds, looking at that and then comparing it to what they said was a 225-pound hog and seeing the size difference, it's like, where's that weight at,
Right. I'm thinking that these babies are like 10, 15 pounds. And he's like, no, they were at least 50. Because you could have shot any of them.
Yeah, so what is the cutoff?
What's that?
So basically the way that they explained it to us was like the actual piglets, like the babies, are legit like a football. Like if it looks like it's bigger than a football or a basketball, take the shot. It's all good.
Right.
Okay.
But
well, I mean, I guess it also depends on who you ask, right? Because I know hogs, they cause a lot of damage, right? So,
yeah, like I can tell you right now, the last night, that Monday night, the hog that I took a shot on and missed was bigger than the one that was killed.
Yeah,
that BJ saw. It was 100% bigger. I wish I was able to get a picture of it. It was big, and I knew for a fact that I would have been able to take that shot. It would have been good with the lodge and all that. I just ended up getting screwed because they came in too late and I took a shot that I shouldn't have, and luckily for me, missed it and didn't wound it.
Yeah, I've only seen hogs twice. My first time was actually in Korea. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of scared because like I didn't know. I just see these black things, like me and my buddy are coming back from the gym. And they're just kind of on top of the hill. We're at the bottom of the hill. And, he's from North Carolina, actually, where I'm at now. I'm like, hey, man, I'm from Jersey. We don't have hogs. What do we do if they start chasing us? He's like, all you need to do, dude, is just get like 3 or 4 feet high on something, a tree. They'll scratch at the tree. They'll lose interest, and then they'll go away. Man, did they screw up our grass? And being in the Army, that's all they care about. Grass and garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was probably like 3 or 4 hogs in our little company area, and they tore up our trash and it was a mess. And the other time was down in Texas. We were doing some training with the Bradleys, and dude, I kid you not, right? We were moving our Bradleys, with the guns and all that. It must have been freaking 30 hogs, dude. It was insane. And again, in the Army, you're taught, hey, don't mess with the wildlife. And I was the first track there, so like I didn't shoot, but everyone from Texas who's stationed down there was like, dude, why didn't you shoot? Like, hogs is the one thing you can shoot, and we had automatic weapons, so
Right.
Just like like I didn't know, like I for my entire military career was like, hey, don't mess with the wildlife. If you mess with the wildlife, you can get like in trouble, and you have to pay for the wildlife depending on what it is. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm not paying for stupid hogs, but little did I know that we could have shot hogs, at least 20 hogs with a 7.62 fully automatic machine gun. Like I definitely missed that opportunity there.
That would have been pretty cool.
Swiss cheese pork chops.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my takeaway of my story is do your research. I learned pretty quick that day, and it was pretty funny when we went back to the Harrisburg show this year and walked up to Kevin, and I was like, "Hey, do you remember us?" And he's like, Yeah, you were the guy that didn't shoot at those 3 hogs, right? And I was like, "Yep, yeah, it's me." But
that's awesome.
I mean, again, you make a joke out of it. I learned a lot that day, and I owned up. I owned it. It is what it is. Like you said, it was kind of a respectable thing, and move on with it, right?
That's a big thing, because I know a couple of guys that actually the guys from the In Season podcast. When I was talking to those guys, they went over to Africa last year, and they had to do a lot of research going over there, because shot placements are different than what we're used to here with whitetail or hogs or anything like that. So they had to learn about shot placement. They had to learn about different setups on their bows and their arrows for what they need for over there compared to here. So like if you're going to hunt something that you've never hunted before, do the research, watch videos, try to get yourself as familiar as you can with it, so you don't run into that situation and you're more comfortable with anything when you see it.
I think the only research I did was shot placement on pigs, just to make sure that I knew where the lungs were going to be at, I knew where the heart was going to be at, and like when to shoot them, like whether they needed to be in the feeding position or standing, just the best way to drill them, essentially. But I never checked, sizes, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's really all the research that I did on it myself. Yeah. I really didn't do too much on it. So Nate, do your research before next year, before we go down there.
Yeah, for sure. So on that note, right, so we try to end off on a positive note. What's your most memorable time?
Overall hunting, or just like deer hunting?
I would say overall hunting. Like, what's the one memory that comes to mind?
I mean, definitely would probably be the first deer that I shot, just because of all like the trials that I went through to get it. I talked about that a couple episodes ago.
Right.
Another one that sticks out was the first time that I got a pheasant. It was with a buddy of mine named Ryan. We were out in Jersey on Game Land, and it was like the first time I heard them. I guess you could call it clucking when they're making that sound, and he was like, "That was a pheasant," and I was like, "Okay, cool." Like, you know what do I do now?
Shoot it.
And he's like, "Well, you really shouldn't shoot him on the ground unless it's like a last ditch effort, but we're going to go into this field, we're going to kick him up." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And I had done that a few times, just walking through the fields. But I kicked this one pheasant up and he flew directly away from me. My shot was perfect, right in the back, and it just plop right back to the ground. It only went maybe 20 yards. And that was like one of the happiest things. Like, I was like, all right, I did this. Like, let's do it again. Like, where's the next one? But
well, and that's always cool too, because I mean, you're shooting at a moving target.
Right.
It's up in the air.
It's completely different. And I mean, how many times did we go out shooting clay birds? And your first couple of times, you're like, this is hard. This is difficult. Like, I'm used to shooting at a stationary target. And now I'm shooting at this thing that's moving away from me or moving, left to right or right to left. And it's hooking and this and that. But finally shooting that first pheasant, I was like, okay, like I can actually do this.
Well, and even there, when you're skeet shooting, like you can get really good at skeet shooting. A lot of people have,
sure.
But you're also saying pull, and you know when it's coming.
Right.
When you're kicking up a pheasant, that thing pops out of nowhere, and it's like, oh crap, you got to go. You got to get the cut up.
And then we started doing skeet shooting, like looking away from the target, having whoever it was set it going a different direction, not just straight away, and pulling when they're ready. So you have to turn around, you have to locate your target, you have to take your gun off of safety, and then make your shot.
Yeah, and so, obviously, not flag your buddy and being safe with the barrel and all that.
Exactly. So that was a huge help for the moving targets and not knowing. Like, we had an idea that there was a pheasant in our immediate area somewhere, and it happened to be, I pretty much almost kicked it. I could split second see it was in front of me and it popped up. And I ended up getting a perfect shot on it. And, I mean, I can't tell you how many pheasants I've shot, probably 50, maybe 40, 50. Nate and I, we did that pheasant hunt on the Grace Game Birds farm down in what's that, Frenchtown?
Yeah.
And I mean, that was your first time getting a pheasant, right?
That was my first time hunting like any type of bird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was pretty legit, and
well, let's switch this over to you. Let's go through your first time pheasant hunting, and then we'll do the most memorable moment with you there.
Yeah, so first time bird hunting. I didn't know. I knew I could shoot at moving targets, right? Like that wasn't, putting the gun on a moving target. I had that down. What I was nervous about is my 12 gauge. I bought that in Texas for like home defense. So the barrel's not long, right? There's no choke on it. When I bought it, I took the plug out and was like, screw this thing. I don't need this, because it's for home defense. I want to put as many rounds as possible. So, PJ and I are like, he actually asked me, he's like, hey, where's your plug? I'm like, dude, I threw that out like 5 years ago. He's like, yeah, you kind of need that.
Yep.
Dude, I'll just put a 2 in. He's like, no. It's like the law. Like, you need something in there, so you can't.
Yep. So if a game warden came, he was going to take his plug checker and put it in there, and that was going to be it.
Yep. And like we said,
we've had it happen to us plenty of times.
Yeah.
Like we said in the one episode, when we went onto the state land for hunting, the one time that we didn't have the game warden in the parking lot in the morning, we walked across the street. We're up on that one hill in the field, and I just happened to realize that I was putting in more shells into the tube than I was supposed to, and I looked at PJ. I was like, "Oh crap, I forgot about that," and I just took everything out, broke a branch off of the tree next to me, stuck it in there real quick just to stop it from going all the way up.
Yep.
Just in case, because I've seen the game wardens up there, especially on state land, they will pull into the parking lot, and if everyone's out in the fields, walking the fields hunting, they'll just drive their truck right up to you. Like, they don't park and then get out and walk to you. Like, they will drive their truck, and there's birds flopping all over the place when they're driving through the field. They're coming to you and they're going to check you, and there's no way of getting away from it.
Yeah. So when PJ brought that up to me, I'm like, shoot, dude, I don't have that. I was like, and I went right to 10. I'm like, well, there goes my time bird hunting, drove, like an hour to get here. And he's like, let's just go to Walmart and find something. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, we just need something. So I think we got like chopsticks or something like that.
I'm pretty sure it was a sushi stick, chopstick. Yeah.
And you just broke it off.
Find a tree. You couldn't find a tree or a branch or something that was.
I'm pretty sure I had them in my truck.
Yeah, it was, dude. It was something off the wall weird. Be like, oh, okay, this. But like, it was my first time like hunting really with people who knew what they were doing. I just wasn't out in the woods with a gun. Well, we had the dog and the other guy.
Yeah, Clay. Clay brought his dog Hank, and I've hunted with Hank. I don't know how many times.
That dog is awesome.
Yeah, Clay and I actually that just brings up a lot more memories with Clay, Hank, and Clay's dad. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so I think my dude, it's like it's a tactical 12 gauge, right? So I was like, shoot, man, like I have no choke. I'm shooting bird shot. Like I don't even know if I'm going to hit something, to be honest with you. Like I don't know what the pattern's like. And then I was like, all right, dude. Like you're just gonna go out there. You're gonna kick up some birds. If you shoot them, you shoot them. If not, you live and you learn. And I don't know. I think who got the first bird?
I don't even remember. I think no. You know what? I think it was Clay's dad.
Yeah. So we got the first bird. I'm like, okay. So this is in my mind. I'm like, this is just like Clay pigeons. I was like, I've done that down in Texas at my buddy's house countless times. I'm like, right. I got this. I just have to be quick on the draw if I want to kill him. So I'm like walking through the fields at like the low ready, like I'm back in the army, because I have like 30 seconds before God knows where this pattern's going.
Right.
And the only rule was don't shoot the dog.
Don't shoot the dog, and don't shoot towards anybody or any of the surrounding houses on the farm property.
I was like, oh, that's it. I was like, that's pretty easy, like I can do that. So I think like one or two birds flew up. I think you got one before me or something like that.
Yeah, I think Clay's dad got one, and then I think I got the next one. We were down in that lower field, and it ran right in front of me and kicked up, and that was another one that was flying directly away, and one shot put it right to the ground. Hank went hauling ass over there, grabbed it, throwing it all around. It was pretty
and
cool.
Like on top of it, like I didn't come with any type of bag, right? Like
nothing.
Dude, like,
you had your Hunter Orange vest, and that was it. Yep.
And I took my gym bag and dumped everything out, and I'm walking through the woods with this gym bag on my back.
Yep. And I didn't know he didn't have a game pouch.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it neither.
I go to put it in, and I'm like, oh, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. I'm like I'm using like my dad's vest from like the early 1900s. It's all dry rotted and falling apart. Like.
So it's not even bright orange anymore. It's just orange.
It's orange.
It's just orange.
It's not blaze orange. It's just orange at this point.
So like I didn't know what I didn't know. Because I didn't do any research. I was like, oh, we're shooting birds. I've shot clay pigeons. Our research complete. Like.
Yep.
You like, you pay the money. There's birds out there. If you find them, you keep them. If not, put them next year. Like
right. Y'all have to. Let me make a note here. I want to pull up all these pictures so I can put them in the video here because it was a good time.
Well, so Nate, so your first deer was what, 2022 was up on the farm that I hunt on when I took you out. I know that we've touched on this a little bit, but why don't you kind of talk about like how that went when that deer popped out? Because we were doing a drive. We sat in the morning till about like 10:30, and then we moved up a little bit, and my dad was driving out that 20 acres. And I remember you saying that it kind of caught you off guard because your ADHD was pretty much kicking in at that point.
Yeah, so like, typical like hunting. First time I'm at this farm, your dad drops me off on the four-wheeler. He's like, hey, walk in that direction. The tree stands that way. Never been in a tree stand before. You know what I'm saying? Like, the week prior to that, I went out in Pennsylvania with this 12 gauge, right? I was shooting slugs because I had a scope on it. And I didn't see anything in Pennsylvania, right? Like, I literally, anything you could do wrong, I did wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, Pennsylvania was a complete massacre. I think I scouted in Pennsylvania like the day before. Like, if hunting season was on a Monday, I went out Sunday for like 30 minutes. I was like, there's water. Here's a nice tree to sit. But 30 yards to my left is a tree stand. I'm like, he'll be good. He's pointing the other way. Like complete massacre, right? So we're on the farm, pitch black, didn't dress right for the weather. Again, first time hunting. I'm freezing my ass off. I'm like, all right, I'm super over this. Brock said that there were deer up here. I don't see anything. I'm like, this is just a huge waste of time. So then we get out, we like huddle. He's like, did you see anything? I'm like, no, I didn't see anything. There ain't no deer on this farm. So Brock's dad was like, hey, you sit right here. Brock, you go on top of the hill. I'm going to drive him out. It's probably like 20 or 30 minutes, dude. I'm cold as shit still. All right. I put the gun down. I'm like, man, dude, I'm super over this. My toes are cold. It was like it was like wet. So it was like that like wet, cold mud on your boots.
And we had talked about going out for lunch after that drive, so you were just ready for pizza and
dude, I was just ready for like warmth and hot food. Like I set my gun up along a tree branch. My hands are in my pocket. Like again, anything you are not supposed to do, I was doing.
Right. And
I want to say 20 minutes goes by. I'm like, all right, I'm thinking about lunch. We were talking about pizza. I'm like, dude, what kind of pizza am I going to get? Like, is this like good, legit pizza? Is this going to be like
it's like Jersey? Of course it's good, legit pizza.
Right. But I lived in Pennsylvania, so I had like doubts, right? So we're sitting there and I look up. I'm like, oh, shoot. And I just like, my hands are in my pocket. I just freeze. I'm like, just like a freaking dinosaur. I'm like, if I don't move, they can't see me. And I'm like, all right, I see 3 does. I'm like, there's that monster, 18 pointer going to come out of the woods. I'm going to draw my gun up and wall mount it, and I'm going to retire from hunting. There was no 18 pointer. It was just 3 does. So I'm like, casually, they start taking off. I'm like, well, if they're running, I'm running. So I run over my gun, probably like 6 feet away from me. I take a knee. I'm shooting offhand. I'm like, dude, I did this complete wrong. Like, I kind of aimed up my crosshairs on the deer. Didn't know exactly where I was shooting. I just knew I saw brown. And Brock said, if it's brown, it's down. So I'm like, all right. So I take one shot. I reload. I take another shot. Brock comes out. He's like, did you hit it? I don't know, dude. He's like, where'd it go? I don't know, dude. When I'm aiming, I'm like this. I got the shapes for this little doe.
And the worst part of it is, that was his exact answer. like that was.
I don't doubt that at all.
His exact answer, and I'm just like, I was like, let's just go to lunch and we'll come back and find this thing. I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh, man, did I get it? Did I not get it? I'm like, I know I saw brown. I know I hit it. I don't know where I hit it, So we get pizza. We go back. He's like, all right, so walk me step by step. And I went through the whole, I was like, yeah, my gun was down, hands in the pocket, walking back and forth, kicking rocks. He's like, you're an idiot. Your dad said something smart. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no way. Brock's dad saying something smart. That's impossible.
And he's like, all right, so where do you think the deer was? I'm like, it was probably about 40, 50 yards to like my 1 o'clock over in that direction. He's like, all right, so like, what did you do after you took the shot? I was like, I reloaded. He's like, you didn't look at the deer? I was like, no, I did not look at the deer. I was kind of nervous, excited,
Do you remember if it like kicked or like jumped? Do you remember anything about it?
Could not tell you.
Okay.
Dude, I was so tunnel vision, like, it was like this, like that was my freaking field of view.
Right.
I saw the like laser vision.
And what really made me nervous about this whole thing was what's going to happen when a buck walks in front of him.
Yeah, right.
That was my thought,
Because he got buck fever on a doe. What's that buck fever going to be like when a buck walks in?
I mean, hey, whatever.
Yeah, so like I've never tracked blood before, never gutted a deer. Like this is all a bunch of firsts. So Brock's walking around, he's like, all right, this is the blood. It's a lot of blood, so you did a good shot. I'm like, oh, all right, yeah, good for me. He's like, now follow this blood and see where it went, because you shot twice and there were 3 deer. So maybe, like you shot 2 of them or something like that. Like you were just in the zone, super not
right.
Cool. You know what I'm saying? And Brock's like, I think he's like, oh, I see white, and I'm like, what's that? I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Is that good? Like, like I just, dude, super could not put anything together, right? So like I'm following this blood. I go over to deer. Brock's like, no, follow the blood in case you got 2, like let's do this right. So I follow the blood, the deer's right there. He's like, oh, I think I shot it in like the lungs or like the heart or something like that.
So I think like even there, we were like, hey, it's your first deer. Kneel down, here's a knife, and start gutting this thing.
Right.
Like it's your deer. Let's teach you how to do it. And when we were looking through it, you definitely hit at least 1 lung.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of got like right in that little pocket, like the bottom back of the lung, a little bit of the liver, and like the top of the heart. Like it was a pretty good shot. Like I mean, it definitely
was it quartering away then?
It was.
I don't know.
Dude, all I can tell you, all I truly remember, it was running left from right.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, excuse me.
This thing was super fast. I'm like, oh man, dude, if I don't get this deer, like I'm never going to be allowed to hunt it here again. I'm going to be shamed. Like burned at the stake.
Yeah.
So, Brock, I didn't even think I came with a knife, to be honest with you. Like,
nope.
Dude, like again, all I came was camo that I bought from Cabela's. Didn't know what camo I was buying. I just know I needed camo. I came with camo, orange, gun, and bullets. That was it.
And even there, like there's a running almost like a joke, but it's actually kind of serious at the same time with my family. Whenever we bring a knife into the woods, we don't shoot a deer. The only time that we've ever shot anything is when we either forget the knife at the house or we forget it like in the truck or something. So we always have to go back to get it. Like it's just something that always happens for us. So you being the only one to shoot a deer that day and being the only one that didn't have a knife, it kind of tracked. It kind of tracked.
So yeah, so like Brock's walking me through this, and for this hunt, I did do research. I watched like a 3-minute video on how to clean a deer. I think twice.
I did my research. I watched 3 minutes on YouTube. Ready to go.
And my grandfather, like he does deer carve ups for Jersey. So like
fun times.
I knew the idea on how to do it. I just never did it myself, if that makes sense, right?
Yep.
And Brock's like, all right, cut down here, take your hands in there, pull everything out.
I'm not gonna lie, like obviously Nate's been to this you also went there a couple times, PJ, and like that. Like we pretty regularly had a deer cut up and butchered and put apart and everything.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
I would say
I'm confident enough that I can butcher up my own deer. I just don't, I don't know the package or what the package, but
right. Nate's deer was probably the slowest deer I've seen carved up in that garage.
I mean,
but
you learned when you did it.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't just going in there and just hacking away and just cutting everything up. Like he actually took the time to like, all right, let's cut here. Let's not cut the meat and let the meat hang on the skin still. Like he went through and did it all. But I mean, it definitely took a while.
I know the first time that I went to the carve up, I didn't have a single clue of what I was doing. And what is it, Edwin?
Yeah.
His stepson or his son Jude.
Yeah, Jude. Yeah.
Jude was like, "Have you ever done this before?" I'm like, "No," and he's like, "All right, you're with me. I'll show you how to do everything." And we did the rear quarter first, and he showed me all the different cuts, how to get the roast out, the football roast, how to get all the steaks out, this, that. And then we did the back straps, we did a front quarter, and he's like, "Do you think you're good?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And ever since then, like, essentially the most important thing he told me, follow the lines.
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly
and
what
that's it. Take the silver skin off and follow the lines, the two biggest things, and how it went.
Yeah, because I've been cutting up deer, right? Like after they've been cleaned and all that, since I was, I don't know, probably 6. But it was always, hey, we cut the ribs off. Now here's a knife and take all the meat off. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like there was no instruction, like it was always, oh, give the ribs, or after they cut all the steaks and the back straps, are like, all right, now get all the meat off you can so we can grind it up.
Yep.
So I mean, I did that for years, and then I stopped doing it, because I, was in the Army. And then when I got out and moved to Pennsylvania, I'm like, all right, I'm going to give this hunting thing a try, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I know, I like deer. They're cool animals. I like to eat them. Like, let's try to kill one. And, it's just been like an ongoing process, countless phone calls to Brock, be like, what do I do here? He's like, well, just use common sense.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, I remember when he went, like he said, he hunted the one day in Pennsylvania before he shot this deer. His like entire ride out to my house, I was on the phone with him, and he was just like asking me questions and stuff. I'm like, you do know that you're on your way to my house, and we could just talk about this then. But
yeah, right.
But I was like, hey man, I was like, I'd rather you ask questions for something that you don't know than to just go out there on a whim and just try it for yourself. I'd rather you ask questions and get yourself more confident, more comfortable.
So what? If I were to ask you the same question, what is the most memorable time? Is that it?
The most memorable time, the one that comes to mind, I was probably 6 years old. We were if you go right next to that green bridge down the road from, there's some state land. I don't want to give the town away, but it's where my grandfather lives. You go down that road, the back way, there's that green bridge.
Yep, I know where you're at.
I think my dad and grandfather and my uncle were small game hunting. My grandfather had dogs. And yeah, I was 6, so like I wasn't hunting, but I was the guy carrying all the dead squirrels and the rabbits and all that. And dude, I thought that was the coolest freaking thing ever. You know what I'm saying?
Part of the crew at that point.
Yeah, like they had, I think like bird shot or something like that. And I asked my dad, I was like, hey, can I, like I want to shoot. He's like, yeah, just, shoot. It's a bird shot, right? So, I shot it, thought I was Superman. A couple hours later, we went to the gun range. And I was like, I thought I was, Top Shot. I'm like, hey, Dad, can I shoot again? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. He's like, go sit down, put the gun on the table, line it up, like all the gun safety. What I didn't know is he put a 3-inch Magnum in the gun.
Oh, right.
You know?
And that
Right.
probably blew your ass back about 20 feet.
So, like, you know, like I'm lining up, getting all set, you know, be like thinking I'm like sniper, you know, about to kill the terrorist or some, you know, dumb shit. And I pull this trigger, dude, and the gun didn't leave my hands because, like, I was terrified to, like, drop my dad's gun at that age. But, dude, I had the world's biggest bruise on my shoulder.
I bet.
And my dad, my grandfather, and my uncle are all on the ground crying because it's so funny. And I'm like, you know, like I'm with the boys, right? So I'm trying not to cry, like 6-year-old me. He's like, how was that? I was like, that wasn't what I shot earlier. He's like, no, that was what we used to kill deer with. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, who wants to shoot this cannon, dude? Like, this isn't even fun.
Like, oh, that poor deer.
Yeah, right.
But I would say, as much as it hurt, that's the time. And then obviously when I got my first deer and my first bird that I wanted to eat, but I screwed it all up again because as I was cleaning the birds, I was watching on YouTube on how to do it. And I didn't let the birds hang.
Oh,
So
when we went to Grace.
Yes.
Okay.
So, like, I cleaned them, I put them in the refrigerator, and the next day I like ate it, and the meat tasted horrible.
Yeah.
And like as I'm eating this right in front of my wife and kids, I'm like, "Oh, this tastes great," you know, like yum. I'm thinking back to my grandfather's deer carve up. I'm like, we normally let those deer hang for like a day or two at least, you know, depending on like how cold it is. I'm like, I didn't let these hang at all to like, you know, I just cleaned them and put them in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder why it tastes like garbage.
Yeah, I mean, pheasant, you really have to cook certain ways, right? And that's kind of what they told us about the wild boars as well. If you cook it the wrong way, it's just not going to taste that good. But I mean, pheasant to me and other people, I just fry them up. That's what I was told is the best way to do it. Just make like chicken tenders out of it. But everybody does it different, right?
Yeah, I just threw it in like I did like salt, pepper, all those spices, and I threw it in like the air fryer for like I don't know, 10 minutes, 12 minutes until like the meat was white. I'm like, I think this is good. I don't know. It was
how did that turn out for you, Nate?
Yeah, not good. I mean, I think I got like 3 or 4 birds. I did eat them just to prove a point to my wife because she's like, that does not look good. I'm like, this tastes fantastic.
I remember you telling me the following day that it wasn't the best experience.
No, you know, I was like, this is great, and you can't have any of it.
In his mind, he's like, this is the worst thing I've tasted, and I can't let my pride down, so don't eat it.
Yeah.
All right, Brock, it's your turn. We've been rambling for a while. What's your favorite experience?
My favorite experience?
Well, I don't want to get to your most memorable moment. What's something you want to talk about? How about that? I'll open the floor to you.
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, as we've said, I got more experience in the woods than you guys do hunting since I was 10 and all that. So I've been kind of thinking about, you know, like the last week when we said that we wanted to do this, just like different experiences that I've had in different times that I don't want to say failed, but did wrong or whatever in the woods. And one of the first ones that popped up was the original property that I hunted on when I was growing up. I might have been a freshman in high school at this point.
So that was the property you and I went to a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Okay.
the one that wasn't too far from high school. Yeah.
Right.
And when we come up that dirt driveway where we had that blind that you sat with me.
Yep, the blind, and then further up's the pond.
Yeah. So when you're going up that driveway, we had that blind probably, I don't know, 40, 50 yards closer to the road at one point. And I was sitting in there for an afternoon sit, and I was in a blind, so I was more comfortable, I guess you could say. Like leaned back in the seat, had the gun resting up against the edge of the blind and everything, and we had a pallet in front of it, but we brushed it in with a bunch of like stuff from around us, like natural cover and stuff, so we can use that as like a rest for the gun. And I never really hunted much out of blinds until that point, so I wasn't really up on the knowledge of what I should do and shouldn't do. I was more out of tree stands or just sitting on the ground itself. And what I decided to do was when I sat in there, I realized like my dad was hunting out of that blind more, and he was a little bit taller than me. So he had the windows propped open just enough to where he can see out of them. He can see around both sides and in front of him. But since I was a little bit shorter at the time, I decided to open up the windows more so I can see and I can be sitting there comfortable instead of like sitting straight up the entire time. And didn't pay enough mind that I should have left them up and readjusted the seat or did something to where I can leave them where they were. And I would say it was probably about an hour before dark. I looked over towards the right because we pretty much had two areas where the deer came in at any given time, morning, night, whatever. They always pick two trails that they came in, and they were both from the right. The one that was kind of at like my 2 o'clock, I just happened to look up, and there was a 7-pointer standing there looking at me at like 60 yards, and like didn't hear it coming in, didn't see it, nothing. Had no idea that thing was standing there, and I just happened to look up, and I just saw the rack, and I was like, oh. But since the windows were so open, the deer can see me moving around and like trying to grab the gun. So I just kind of like slid down in my seat and just tried to like get below where the window opening was. And I got the gun and I like got it over. And like I'm trying to stay low enough so where he can't see me through the window and just keep my head still. And I'm like getting the gun onto my lap. I was in a like a stadium lawn chair. So I actually grabbed the gun and put it like through the armrest, and I'm like just trying to like get it up, and I just slowly started to bring it over. And then as I went to like pick myself up to actually get it out the window, the buck just kind of like looked at me, snorted, kicked a couple of times, and turned around and off he went. And then I just sat there and I'm like, what did I do wrong? Like what am I doing?
Right.
And then I started to thinking about it a little bit, and I realized I opened these windows up too much and took the whole purpose of hunting in a blind out of the equation.
Right.
Obviously sitting in a blind, it's to conceal you, it's to help you out. And I just opened up these windows and just let all this air in. And he saw pretty much everything I was doing. Because while I was trying to grab the gun, another thing I did wrong was I took my eyes off the deer. I was more worried about grabbing the gun, trying to get myself set, and was like looking down the whole time. And I wasn't paying attention to what that buck was doing. So I didn't pay attention at all to the fact that he saw everything I was doing.
That was going on. Yeah.
Yeah. He pretty much waited. Was like, "Oh, you got a gun? Bye." He's like, "I'm out." he just darted off and didn't say anything the rest of the night. And I just sat there the whole time, like I just had a perfect shot on a really nice buck. I mean, 14 years old. I was like, "This is a great looking buck. Like, I'm definitely going to drop this thing," and just completely screwed up the entire situation.
So you learned at that point, keep your windows closed as much as possible, and never take your eyes off the target.
Yeah, I mean, since then, if I'm in a blind, I mean, obviously different blinds, there's going to be different situations. Sure. Like the new blinds now have like little sliders on them. The ones that we had at that point had like an actual zipper. So like if you kept the thing all the way closed and then you're trying to like unzip it as the deer's walking in, you're making noise, you're going to spook it out.
I remember seeing somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there blinds where they actually recommend you shoot through and then replace those panels? I remember seeing something about that where they were like, look, you can see 100% through. They can't see back. And they tell you to sit further back in the blind and then shoot through, and it won't stop. Obviously you can't do it with archery, but with rifle or shotgun, shoot through the mesh, and then you just replace that like easy panel or something like that.
Well, so companies like Tidewee, Rhino Blinds, I think there's a couple more. They have the see-through blinds where you can have everything 100% closed and you can see everything like 270 degrees around you and not have any windows open or anything. This blind that we had, years ago, we actually could shoot bow through it.
Oh, okay.
You could shoot a bow. I don't know much on how it affected the kinetic energy and stuff like that. I mean, because at that point I was my freshman year of high school is when I first started bow hunting, so I didn't really know much of anything at all about bow hunting. And I just knew from the manufacturer, I was told I could shoot my bow through it. Okay, I'll shoot my bow through it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I personally wouldn't recommend it, even if they say you can do it. I still feel kind of, especially now that I know more than I knew then, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I mean, if it was something where, like it's 220-inch deer walk through, yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to make that thing not see me. And I'm going to lose that little bit of energy to take that shot if I have to.
Right.
But in a realistic situation, I would rather have the windows open a little bit and, not open to the point where the deer can see all the movement or whatever, because you can have a little bit of extra movement when you're in a blind, but you still want to stay still and you want to make sure that you're not moving, making noise, whatever the case is. But
so what?
So what about your best or your
Most memorable moment?
Like, what comes to mind when your son's comes to you? It's like, Dad, what is the best time you had? What are you gonna tell him?
I mean, now there's a good tie because I just shot my first turkey last week, but I would say it would probably be my first buck when I was 10. I had just turned 10 in October, and that weekend I was at the state office taking my license test. We went out for a pheasant hunt in Pennsylvania. Me, my dad, my grandfather, my brothers, we all went out, took a trip, shot my first pheasant. But I was like, I want to go deer hunting. Like, this is it. I always, every year, would help my dad, track the deer. Like, he would shoot something, he'd come home to the house, pick me up. We'd go out, we'd track it, we'd do all that. But I was like, I want to shoot a buck. Like, that was the only thing I cared about. And Saturday of buck week, because I was in school all week, we went out that morning, and there's a spot where we used to hunt at across from my great grandparents' house that we called the rock pile. That was like, everyone knew pretty much where the rock pile was. Me and my dad went up and sat up there. We found 2 down trees that kind of made like a triangle. We just tucked ourselves in between those. And I would say probably about a half hour, 45 minutes after the sun came up, we had a pack of does come through. And the way that we had it, like, I was facing one way, my dad was sitting next to me facing the other way. So they came in from my back, so I couldn't see them. I just heard everything. And my dad pulled up, he took a shot on one, and I turned around real quick to see, like, what it was, or to see if it went down or whatever. And he was like, take a shot. And I'm sitting there arguing with him. I'm like, no, it's not a buck. I don't want it. And he was like, take the shot, shoot the deer. And I was like, it doesn't have horns. I don't want it. Like, we sat there and argued for like 5 minutes, just watched these deer trample off. So we sat there it was still early enough. We just kind of sat there and hung out for a little bit. And then it was about 8:30. I was now facing the opposite direction because of all that happened with the does. My dad turned around and saw a line of deer coming in behind us. So I was able to get, like, kind of like rolled over. It wasn't really like on my stomach, but I was like leaning up against the tree, had the gun resting on the tree. And there was like 4 or 5 deer that came through. And there was a nice 6-pointer that was in there. It was like, I think it was like 2 does, ended up being, or no, it was 3 does, ended up being 2 bucks. I saw the 6-pointer and I was like, I want to shoot the 6. And he was like, shoot the last deer. Because he obviously saw him coming in from a lot farther than I did. And when I first saw him, the buck that I ended up shooting, its head was in a low hanging pine tree. So to me, it looked like a doe. And at 10 years old, I saw the rack. I was like, I want to shoot a buck.
Sure.
So, again, we sat there as these deer are walking in. We're sitting there arguing. He was like, shoot the last deer, the last one in line. That is the one you want to shoot. Shoot it. Do not shoot that 6. And I was like, and at that point, I was like, all right, screw it. I'm shooting the last deer. Pulled up, put it on the shoulder, dropped it. Little cheap $90 20 gauge over and under. And as it dropped, I saw that rack come out of that tree. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was just like, what just happened?
Right.
And he was like, see, I told you to shoot the last one. Don't shoot the 6. And all the other deer took off. And I'm just sitting there like shaking, 10 years old, like, oh my God, I just shot a buck. I'm like freaking out, losing my mind. We got up, we walked around, and I mean, it was a cheap 20 gauge over and under, so it didn't completely kill it right away. So I ended up putting another round into it. And again, like I said, we don't have any knives on us because that's just how my family is. And I would say it was probably about 500 yards or so to my great grandparents' house. So he was like, and at 10 years old, I had my dad's old coveralls on me. Like, these things were huge on me, but Nice. It didn't matter. But it was just like, you got to stay warm. He's like, throw on, 6 pairs of sweatpants and 4 sweatshirts. And, I was just doing everything I could to stay warm. And he was like, go back to the house. Tell your great grandfather that you shot a buck and you need a knife. So I easily could have just taken a walk out to the house. I darted across these woods. The arms, the flaps, and everything from these coveralls are flapping in the wind behind me. And I just bolted to the house. I was so excited. Got down there. I was like, I need a knife. I need a knife. And of course, with me being out of breath, my great grandfather's like, what happened? Like, he's thinking that like my dad got hurt or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, what happened? Like, do I need to come out there? And I'm like, no, I shot a buck. I think he's dead. Like, I need a knife. And he was like, oh, cool. Here you go. Just like handed it off. And I ran all the way back out. And at that point, there was enough time that passed. My grandfather, it's known that if there's like a follow-up shot, you probably shot a buck. That's pretty much just like how everything went when we were hunting up there as kids. So at that point, once he heard the second shot, he got out of the tree and he walked all the way around the ridge to get to us because he knew that I was the one sitting over there and kind of expected to be like, okay, he just shot a buck, let's go over and help him out and everything. So by the time that I got back out there, I saw him walking down across the ridge and sat there and had my dad and my grandfather with me while I had my first ever buck laying on the ground. And my dad ended up gutting the buck. It was basically just like, like your first time, like, I'll gut it, show you how to do it. From here on out, it's on you. So I've gut pretty much every deer since then. But, being able to, I was still shaking like 2 days later. Like, I was super pumped about it. But, me, my dad, my grandfather drug this thing all the way out across to the house. We took a bunch of pictures with it, and we were just having a great time with it. And then, of course, that afternoon, my dad's like, "Hey, like, let's go out shoot again." And I'm like, "I don't think I can." I was like, I'm still shaking. Like, I'm still.
Right.
It was crazy. I mean, there's times that I still get pretty pumped up when a deer walks in. Like,
sure.
I mean, I think, if there's ever a time that a deer walks in front of you and your heart doesn't jump a little bit, that's when you got to hang the head up. But I don't think I'll ever be as excited and shaking as much as I was that day.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard, there's always the first deer, and then every trophy after that is just a whole different feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean,
and that's been this past December. That's been 23 years, and it's like I remember it like it was yesterday.
Sure.
Like, I think that's one of those that I will probably never forget.
Yeah, I mean, even I know we had talked about my first deer a couple episodes ago, but that's something I'll never forget either. I had that spike on the camera how many times, and then I took my first shot, missed. RJ, the deer ran over to RJ stand. He took a shot, he missed. That deer came back, and I connected with it, and it ran down that rock pile, and I didn't want to get out of the tree because I thought I was going to fall. I was shaking so bad, it's something you'll never forget.
That poor buck probably had no idea what was going on. I think it was in a war zone.
Yeah, pretty much. These things are flying at me, and but
I mean, even there, I mean, I know that we're probably getting ready to wrap this up, but we've talked about that in the second episode with land or stand placements.
Yep.
You've learned from that your first time ever going out and putting a stand out to, now be more selective on where you're putting a tree, not just, that'll hold.
Yeah, that tree looks great.
Stand up.
Yeah.
Like you've learned through the years and everything to do that. Obviously Nate's now learned to, not put his gun off to the side or play with
6
rocks
feet
and
away.
Sticks.
Yeah. maybe that's my thing, maybe that's when I'm going to get my first buck when I'm not paying any attention, like you guys don't bring knives. I play with, sticks and rocks.
So is that what the problem was this past buck week when you shot the deer that got away? Like, were you just not playing with anything?
No, I actually was. I was actually paying attention to some squirrels.
Okay.
But
that'll happen.
Yes, it will.
I think this this past season, I just don't think it was a good pattern,
I mean, that's another thing that, we could kind of just touch on quickly is that. So when you went out this past year, you were sitting in the ladder stand.
Yeah.
Which actually was the same stand that you started off with the year before.
Right.
And you had the deer come through, but until you took that shot on that deer, you personally never shot that gun.
No. So that was my cousin's gun, because, I was like, hey, I want something with a longer barrel, hopefully it's a better pattern with, the shot and all that. And yeah, so, I mean, it is what it is now, now I'm trying to put some, pennies away for my own gun,
Sure.
And all that. But even though I could not, get the deer, I still learned a lot about tracking and blood, and even not even the pin size, of blood that you need to find,
Right.
I probably spent 3 or 4 hours. When you said, hey, just go back up to your ladder stand, I'm like, no, screw you. I'm going to go find this deer because this is now personal.
Well, and even there, we touched on this a little bit as well in one of the episodes. There was that little bit of stretch going down that ridge where we didn't have blood. We lost blood for 30, 40 yards.
Yeah.
But, we went through the whole process of, taking a step back and looking at the leaves and kind of trying to tell where the deer is heading when it's kicking up the leaves and it's running. And, just because you don't have blood, you can still follow that trail and get an idea of where it went or a general direction. And, 2 days later, we were able to bring some closure to that one when we found the murder site from the coyote.
Yeah, they picked it pretty well clean.
But, I mean, hey, that's going to happen. You hunt long enough, you're going to lose deer. It's going to happen. You don't want it to happen. You want to be able to drop everyone that you take a shot at, but eventually that's going to happen. It just happened that yours came a lot quicker than most people.
Yeah, for sure.
But this year we'll get out there and we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now this year, I, just need to get out there for some bow, so I figured I have archery season in Pennsylvania,
Yep.
Then shotgun season, then archery in Jersey, then shotgun season in Jersey, and going up to Maine with my cousin. So out of the 3 or 4 states, 3 states, I better walk away with something, or I gotta hang something up. Something's got to give.
It'll happen.
It'll happen, buddy. And I know we've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, but when would we figure mid-June we're gonna have to do that Lancaster archery?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
we'll have to put some pennies together and get ourselves a GoPro and mount it properly so we can get some good vantage points of that. Hopefully my bow doesn't explode this time.
We'll have to make sure that Nate's practicing more than 20 or more than 8 yards in his basement.
Yeah.
Get him.
Well, that's a 20-yard shot there, so. But all right, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Brock, Nate, I appreciate all the time you guys have had. Brock been doing excellent with the Facebook and the TikTok. Make sure you guys follow that. Make sure you like, subscribe this video here. Eventually I'll get to the Instagram and putting out YouTube reels, but yeah, time is not on my side lately. But
yeah, life.
Yeah, it's rough, and it's getting rougher over the next few months here. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we will have we'll have another episode next week. We'll go from there.
All right, y'all. Take care. They don't take big bucks to kill big bucks.
All right, y'all.
There you go.
See you.